I am live, and it appears I'm live a few minutes early. So, those of you who showed up early, of which there are precisely, I don't know, there might be one or zero. Um, I apologize for starting early. I'll try not to do anything too important or significant in the first 5 minutes. So, I've got my morning coffee. I am, of course, David Matthew Weiss. Boy, I hiccup there in my. Let me say that again. I'm David Matthew Weiss. That would be my name. Blended Planet, and we are forging ahead on the real-time animation work surrounding an anime, essentially, westernized anime, you might say, cartoon. We're knocking out 24-minute episodes, and we are on episode 2 of 12 that are planned, and so we've got to get some work done. There's basically about 3 minutes left in, what are we down to? We're down to 3:06. So there's kind of a lot of story that takes place. It's pretty dense, actually, this 3-minute run, which for episode 2 really carries us basically to about that 2/3 point where we sort of have a change in the situation and then the drive through to the finish. So, which of course was animated quite some time ago. So that's what all this is. So anyway, what we've got is the situation where, for those who don't know, the scenario is that you've got this forced marriage between these two people, the prince and this girl Tianara, whose this forced marriage has been arranged by the bad guy Golek, who's that guy right there, and Tianara's mother, who actually is a distant cousin of Golek. And this is an insidious, nefarious scheme because it actually could give Golek a claim to this guy's crown, a legitimate claim to the throne. So that's not very nice. I mean, in a way, you can't blame Golek. I mean, if you were in a situation where you are really, at best, you can only be essentially the most privileged of the slaves, you might have higher ambitions. You might want to stage a coup or something. Anyway, so that's what's going on. And so what's happened is all this has happened with the backdrop of an ongoing drought and drought and famine, I guess you'd say. And so during this event, lo and behold, it actually started raining, which I don't know if you guys can see it, but basically there's rain starting to fall. Now, importantly, we need to add the rain to this shot. I think this shot already has it. It does, but it probably should be denser. So these last few shots I did, we need to add the rain in there, but that's not really that's kind of neither here nor there for today. That'll be quick and easy to do. Since we are using Tahoma2D, which of course is a fork of OpenToonz, a freely available animation software, very capable software, and the rain that we saw in those other shots is in fact a single level in our animation X sheet that we can reuse in multiple scenes. So that's what we're going to do. But in the meantime, there's work to do, and this, friends, this is our situation. Golek. I actually shouldn't be speaking in the voice of whoever that was, which, by the way, I don't know who that was. I should be speaking in the voice of Golek. Golek's voice would be something like this. He's roughly, if you look at his face closely, you'll find he's based loosely on Edward G. Robinson, an actor from had a lot of film noir roles back in the 40s, 50s, probably back to the 30s, actually. But he had a role in The Ten Commandments as a character named Dathan, who Golek is loosely based on, in the sense that Golek, like Dathan, is this kind of snaky guy that's real opportunistic. Like he's always scheming, always trying to figure out a way to take advantage of the situation. Hey, Inio-san, even to the point where when things completely flip upside down, he'll still figure out a way to take advantage of the situation. So this is what we're working on today. This is going to be a garden variety animation type of session, I would say. So we've got Golik trying to quiet the crowd down, basically. Okay, everybody's getting excited because the rain has come, and Golik has actually really built up the situation, and then he invites the prince out onto the stage to say, you know, come out and basically say a few words to the crowd kind of thing. And so there's the prince. And we cut to, frankly, this was a shameless narrative device that I used, which was to, why do we want to bore the audience by showing Vespar walking across the stage? That would be silly, right? So what I did instead is I cut to the king and Carliana saying to the king, oh, how handsome he looks. And then when we cut back to Golek, Vespar will be just moving into position, like kind of boop, stepping into position that way. So it just saves us having to draw him walking across the stage, which is really kind of a waste of time, and it doesn't tell you anything. By the way, in the in the animation pantheon, I actually watched a little bit yesterday of the original Rescuers by, you know, Disney. Boy, that was their bad period. That period in the, I don't know, I guess the early to mid 60s through the, well, I suppose the early to mid 80s was a rough period. There's a lot of things wrong with that movie. The animation's cool, a lot of it, but as far as the story and the characters and the way they wasted time in that movie. Of course, here I am, you know, I of all people should talk about wasting time, right? Yeah. Yeah. Alan Emmanuel, you are new. I do not remember seeing your name before, but welcome. I don't know if you know what's going on, so why don't you post a comment telling me if you've been lurking and you kind of know what's going on, because if you don't, I'll give you like a 30-second recap. The 5-second recap is episode 2 of a 24-minute anime. I should say it's a westernized anime-ish sort of cartoon, right? And we're down to about 3 minutes left in episode 2. And so there we go. Hey, Mikhail, do you study? Oh, do you study facial expressions? Because your characters have a variety of facial expressions. I don't think it'd be fair to say I mean, I think I do. I mean, I've always, you know, I'm a cartoonist. So I do have a probably, okay, I just said 10 seconds because OBS always takes 10 seconds. It'll disconnect and the whole screen will freeze. And then it always takes about 260 frames for OBS to reconnect. So if that happens, don't panic. I'll be back in 10 seconds. And then later, if you watch this on YouTube, those 10-second breaks are taken out of the video. So anyway, so I would say I study facial expressions in the sense that I've done caricature. Like I guess I could say maybe show this. Let's go to the FS viewer. I'm on another screen, so bear with me for just half a second here while I go to this folder. Okay, so we'll get into the facial expressions question here. Okay, so there you go. Kind of a Morgan Freeman, kind of a Robin Williams, kind of a, oh shoot. I'm thinking all these 70s actresses. Cloris Leachman, Madeline Kahn. Her name escapes me. There she is again, and darn it, I can't remember. So that's a digital painting of her. That's not a... So yeah, I mean, I think I kind of have a sense of that's actually me turned into some sort of elf, I guess. That's a painting I did 15 years ago. So you can see, I mean, obviously to do wildlife as well, you sort of have to be tuned into being able, like I was talking about in the live stream a couple days ago, you know, you look at something, you process it in your brain, and then you try to make it come out on the paper. And I explained that Mikhail a couple days ago. For me, if you want to improve at dealing with facial expressions, that's probably the best way to do it, in my opinion, right? Um, so there's a lot more we could talk about, and I think that if you look at the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons from their best period in the 40s, I suppose into the 50s, and then you look at the later stuff where Friz Freleng had a pretty heavy role, and frankly, so did Chuck Jones, but the earlier ball small combo jazz type music, um, and it just doesn't have that spark of life to it, and it's a really hard thing. I'm kind of um, it's a really hard thing to explain what made the difference between the characterization of those earlier Warner Brothers cartoons versus the later 1960s era ones. And sometimes it's simple stuff, like the faces are just like a little cockeyed and not symmetrical and things like that. Um, so, um, hi Alan, he's just doing it to chat while he works. Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's the story. I mean, here we are. We've got all this animation. I got animation to do. This is the shot I'm working on today, and I tend to blab a lot while I'm working. So let's get to it. I did say today was going to be a garden variety animation session. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut and paste this storyboard image into Tahoma2D. So that's one of the cool things you can do with Tahoma2D is you can use the Windows clipboard. If you're using standard OpenToonz, you don't really get that benefit. Okay? So step one for me is going to be, I'm going to save this as shot number 601. So we're going to go save if seen as, and again 601 because this is shot number 601. 601. Come on, 601. So Tahoma's taking half a second to save it, which means I get the opportunity to drink some of my delicious coffee, which is, by the way, Cafe Bustelo. It's an Italian espresso, and it is so good. So there you go. So there's another example. Like clockwork, stupid old OBS freezes up and connects after 10 seconds. It's been an ongoing controversy whether that's actually the fault of OBS or the fault of YouTube or the fault of my internet connection. But I, at this point, believe it's got something to do with OBS. But that's neither here nor there. We got work to do. Okay, so what happens is we got the rain coming down. And as I'm looking at this, so I'm just going to kind of process out loud here what's going through my mind. First of all, in terms of the framing, if we go back over to the show, to the edit, this is cropped fairly tightly, and as you can see here, it's really not. Okay, I actually don't mind that. I think I'm going to keep the framing more like this. Let me think about this for half a second. Not really actually sure why it, oh, I know why. I know what happened. The preview in my editor, which is Sony Vegas, it's like a fairly old version of Vegas, was set to half resolution. So, but anyway, like I said, that actually isn't so bad because I do really want to pull this out a little bit. I was thinking about my drawings when I create a level are full HD, and if you probably can't see it, but there's a faint line around this edge. So this is the HD frame. And then inside here, what the camera sees is broadcast HD, which is 1280 by 720. And I just do that because the resolution is not a problem on the one hand, and on the other hand, it gives me a little bit of room to crop or pan the shot, right? So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and make a few tweaks to the storyboard image right out of the gate here to sort of get it to where we need it to be, because for one thing, Golik's costuming in the storyboard, which was done quite some time ago, was wrong. So this should probably be at 0. So let's first of all just get this slammed a little more into place in terms of the costuming situation. So Golik's got these tassels on his costume, and by the way, I probably should mention the crowdfunding thing. I haven't been live streaming the last few days as much because I'm basically dialing up to crowdfund the show in about 2 weeks. And so before I did that, I was wanting to have a discussion with my film distributor to talk about how they can maybe help with that and blah blah blah. And so anyway, I've got a couple things I need to do on my end. I want to put together a video that's basically all about the concept behind the show and the characters. And then another video that's going to be more about the animation process and kind of where does the budget go? You know, what's the money kind of paying for? It's a long process. You're talking about, you know, you've got to write a script, you got to do the storyboard. You're going to animate the pencil test. You got to do ink and paint. You got to have voices. You got to write the musical score. You've got to edit it. There's of course conforming and finishing for your platforms that you're distributing to. So it's pretty big undertaking. I don't mind telling you, it's a big undertaking. I'm going to look at Golik's costuming here. Yeah, actually, okay, I sort of got this wrong. Indiegogo. I'm doing Indiegogo. Call me a loser if you want, but the truth of the matter is I'm doing Indiegogo for 2 reasons. One is so that I can keep the money even if I don't hit my goal. Okay, so I'm an eternal cynic, and I'm sure that no one cares at all about what I'm doing, and nobody's going to give anything. You know what I mean? I'm always like, yeah, I mean, why would anyone want to support me, kind of thing. So and that may turn out not to be true, but so with Indiegogo, it's kind of more like GoFundMe, where even if you don't hit your goal, you get to keep the goods. Now, I feel comfortable doing that for this reason, and this is one thing that makes my crowdfunding different from a lot of people's, which is this: I am not asking people to support something with nothing but an idea and a plan and a wish of actually getting it done. Okay, so here we have a scenario where I'm only 3 minutes away from finishing episode 2, so episode 1's already animated. Now, there are things I have to go back and fix, but the point is that even if the crowdfund doesn't help that much, I'm definitely still going to deliver 2 shows. And I mentioned, actually, I'll tell you, here's what can go wrong. This is one thing that I find, frankly, a little disconcerting, is that on Indiegogo there was a I'm looking it up. There was an animated cartoon which looked pretty good, done by a former Disney animator. And as I say, it looked pretty good. And this thing, this is what can go wrong with a crowdfunding campaign. This campaign for this show, it looks really good. They raised $500,000. Okay. As you notice here, it says we're not done yet. The show hasn't been delivered, and that campaign that you just saw was 6 years ago. Okay. Something's wrong with that. Okay. Now, a year or two, push it out to 3, probably be okay depending on the project. But that seems a bit long to me for people to wait. So I really wanted to be sure that once we launch the crowdfund, that we can be reasonably confident within, I don't know, probably 6 months, I would think, both episodes 1 and 2 will be able to be released. And then the idea is that not only, you know, because I'm just underwriting what I'm doing. You know, I'm going to sit here and work every day on this thing for probably 4 years. Well, you know, this helps pay the bills. So the other thing about Indiegogo is that we can just leave the campaign open. So in that sense, it's kind of like a Patreon thing where once it starts, even though there is going to be like a 60-day seriously aggressive push, once that 60 days ends, the campaign can still be open so that as the show gets traction and is distributed, which it will be, and more people know about it, then maybe we could get sort of a feedback loop where, it could be that most of the support that happens would happen after it's already come out, after episode 1 has already been out. That wouldn't be surprising at all, actually. And so, we kind of want to accommodate that possibility. So, anyway, for that reason, so this is actually a really good question because I really looked hard at that. Do we do the Kickstarter thing, sort of the all or nothing? Come on, let's do it. Or do we hedge our bets a little bit and go the Indiegogo route? I decided to go the Indiegogo route, so hope that may be more information than you wanted, but yeah, that's the plan. Okay, so why don't I use a dark theme? I don't know. Why are you asking me this? Okay, fine. Let's go to our preferences and let's find out. Let's just ask ourselves, why don't we use a dark theme? Well, it's certainly easy enough to do. Okay, that's darker. I'm not sure I'm so big on darker. Please restart to reload this with icons. Okay, that's fair. Okay, so well, let's save all, and then we'll restart Tahoma, and let's see how we do. Okay. Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. What I've found, okay, so that's a good question. Number one, using the dark theme isn't enough to save my retinas. Okay. This is from, I think, Saturday. Anyway, I have 3 screens here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And even using a dark theme isn't gonna do it. It's still my eyes are gonna start getting really irritated from looking at a screen. Now, for me, I figured I'd go ahead and try this, and I don't like it, but we'll see. For me, the contrast is more egregious than the light color. I'm gonna wear the glasses no matter what. Okay, so they filter out the blue light, and they basically keep my eyes from really ever getting irritated by the computer screens. So, but we'll try it. I really, frankly, I don't care too much. When I'm using Blender, I tend to favor a dark theme. Actually, when I'm using Krita, as you can see, I tend to favor a dark theme. For whatever reason, when I'm using Tahoma2D, I tend to favor a light theme. So, it's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? Okay, so Golek I'm just tightening his characterization up. He's basically happy, so I'm giving him a little bit of a lift there on his cheekbones because things are sort of going his way at the moment, although they're about to stop going his way in just half a second because basically the rain stops. Okay? So I'm doing this as a pencil test at this point, which means that this is a raster level since I cut and pasted it on the clipboard. So if you guys don't know what a raster level is, I will explain it. So if anyone wants to know what the difference is between a raster level and a smart raster level, or a Toonz raster level, which is what OpenToonz calls it, then I'll explain that. Otherwise, I'll assume you guys already know. I will assume you know. Okay, so now this hand is here. I'm gonna actually smack that hand up there. So I tend to, when I'm blocking in something that's going to be animated a bit, as opposed to like a static drawing where I'm using animation tools to just animate something that is really a single drawing. If I'm going to be doing more frame by frame animation, I tend to do this sort of sticks and balls thing where I really, as I often say here, is I work from the known to the unknown. And So I'm drawing this, like I know where his wrist is going to be, right? Since I know where his wrist is going to be, that kind of tells me where his elbow is going to be. And this gets back, by the way, to Mikhail's question about facial expressions. I mean, I don't think facial expressions are that different from body language, you know? It's all a matter of just sort of paying attention. And the key is, if it doesn't feel right, if you draw it and you're going, oh, it just doesn't feel right, then you have to start getting real analytical about what's wrong. You know, you have to figure out what you did wrong. And then hopefully you won't make that mistake next time. But this is actually an interesting situation right here, as a matter of fact, because you've got this. This is not a simple sort of cheeseball cartoony pose. He's got, his arm is actually foreshortened in multiple ways. So let's deal with that here in just a second. First, I want to make this arm a little bigger. I made it too small. It's one of the risks you run when you're zoomed in a little bit too far. Okay, so here, what am I talking about? If you go, let's erase this. A lot of times if things aren't like happening, it really helps to just erase it and start over. So I'm going to block in the sort of the barrel of his chest. Okay, so now the question is, well, what about his arm? All right, flipping the canvas does help for sure. Okay, so that sort of tells me the shoulder basically is here. Okay, so he's got fairly wide square shoulders. So there's Golek. He's a little bit of a tubby guy. He's an older guy, little overweight kind of thing. Okay, so what I was talking about, so we put this one here and this one here. Okay, so we excuse me. So there's his hand. So I see a problem here because he's like this. It's like his shoulder and elbow would be all scrunched up against his body, and I think one of the reasons that it's tempting to do that is because this is distracting me a bit. The reality is he should probably be more like over here. These guys are too close together, and so it's kind of, he's kind of crowding Golek's hand. So now that I did that, I'm thinking his hand would turn out a little bit, and it just kind of feels like it'd be more like over here. Okay, so now if that's true, you guys would be surprised that this is actually a more tricky than normal pose. Because this, okay, so his upper arm is actually pointed out this way, basically. Right? So we've got these cylinders, so we'll kind of do this the sort of the simplistic Christopher Hart way, just so we can sort of see what we're doing. And I don't like this at all, I have to say. This looks really awkward to me, like bad, like among the worst drawings I've ever done kind of thing. I mean, really bad. Okay, so let's start over. This gets back to Mikhail's thing about expressions. The thing is, I'm looking at the body and I'm going, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. Okay, so let's loosen up here and try to figure out what's going wrong. Okay, so you guys, this is a good experience for you guys because you're getting to see actual failure in real time, which I think is great. My cartoon, based on yours, would have NASA sending their artificial clouds to bring rain to the peasants. Okay, so you'd kind of have a little bit of a time warp thing going on. Hey, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so I just want to kind of play with this a bit. If his shoulder was here, so I'm taking away his arms for a minute. So the problem you're going to have here is if I were to put his hands down here, which kind of feels good. Okay, so it'd be kind of like this type of a situation. The problem is, you got to remember, if I'm going to do that, he's going to be lifting those hands up. So one way or another, I got to get to this other pose. So I can put it off, but I can't avoid it completely. Right? But let's just keep working with this and see what feels right. Okay? This, and by the way, let's see. Okay, just for the record, this would be another reason why I don't like the dark theme. Because I would have expected, like there you're cropped to the camera, and here you're not. So I would want, basically I can't see what I've drawn here at all because of the background. Maybe it's possible to change just this you know, the the drawing board part of it. I don't know, but yeah, that's a bit of a clunker. A bit of a clunker in my book. Okay, so I'm gonna put his hands like this, and so I like that much better as a starting point. Okay, so here I'm having to just kind of imagine in my mind what the... I like that. I like that. This is... If you want to see Dave in his better mode in terms of drawing, you're starting to see it now, because I'm starting to... This is more what I think I'm better at, is, you know, just kind of feeling shapes and, you know, organic stuff. I tend to be able to do. Anyway, yeah, not horrible, not horrible. I think that's working. Okay, so yeah, but you still need to get the hands up. So we're going to do this the traditional way today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the D key and make a duplicate, and now I'm going to see what can I cut and paste here. First thing I want to do is take his head and push it back, and then I'm just grabbing his body in pieces to just make adjustments. Oops. And just block in the movement one little bit at a time. So he's going to go. Okay, so if he did that, so that's a good starting point, actually. If that happened, well, what would happen to his shoulders? Well, we know his shoulders would go down because he's leaning back. So we've got to take this whole area, would have to move a little bit back and a little bit down like that, right? Okay. Now in this case, I would say the first step Golik is taking here is to quiet the crowd down. Okay, so the rain hasn't stopped yet. So we've got quite a bit that's sort of packed into this scene, if the truth be known. Okay, so got this little bit of a lean back, and now I would say let's grab this contour and let it kind of do what it's supposed to do. And you could argue that, you know, why don't you just redraw it there, Dave? That's a perfectly fair argument. I just find once I get the initial pose right, it's just kind of quick and easy to just kind of move things, right? Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to hit the D key again, and this is going to be Golik just getting these people to quiet down, and I'm going to do this in kind of 2 steps. I'm feeling like he's going to lean back even further, but at the same time, I'm kind of thinking also he would kind of go like this. Okay, why did we just wind up with 2 drawings there for the price of 1? I have no idea. I'm just going to delete that one. And if it's possible to, I'm going to delete this as well. Okay, that worked. Very good, very good. Okay, so boom, boom. Yeah. So if that happened, then this whole section, including his shoulders, this whole unit, I'm feeling is going to move back a little. Boop, boop. Okay. So now, what about... We'll deal with the tassels later. I think they're really just kind of gumming up the works, if the truth be known. By the way, Mikhail, in regard to your comment, I'm assuming you know that this story takes place thousands of years ago. In which case, of course, if NASA did that, they would have to go through some sort of time warp. Just wanted to mention that little detail. Oh, come on. Boop. Okay, so this worked. This worked. I'm going to like literally erase this whole thing so I can redraw it and just kind of feel it more. So I want to get a little loosey-goosey here. This is kind of a useful technique too sometimes, is just really scribble. Really scribble. If you've read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, John Buscema did devote one whole page to the idea of scribbling as a drawing technique. He didn't spend much time with it, I must say, but he did mention it. I believe in the context of a drawing of Captain America, if I remember correctly, from my venerable copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which I acquired when I was in high school. I'll be moving away from hand drawing and using mouse and vector. Or should I just buy a drawing pad and do the grid and learn drawing? Well, first of all, I would say that the as far as the field guide and stuff goes, I find them very useful. Like, in fact, I don't know why I don't have it on all the time. I think visually it's a bit of a distraction probably for you guys. But as far as drawing goes, having the grid, like, I'll show you an example. I'll just do this on the fly right now. If I wanted to draw a character and I say I just want to be geometric with it, so I'll draw myself. Okay, so I'll draw me, go like this, and I'll go like that. And the idea of being able to measure and actually have things be somewhat symmetrical just because you're using the grid to guide you is super, super helpful. So even if you're doing something that is, let's say, this is actually a fun way to work. So I want to mention this because of what you just said. I think this would be an interesting thing for you to try. If you don't have any kind of tablet, though, like you don't have a tablet at all, like even a traditional tablet as opposed to a screen, do you have anything like that, or are you just only drawing on paper and trying to figure out how you're going to deal with the computer downstream? If you could clarify that. So what I would say is, it's for a lot of people, I think it would be interesting to put a grid up and then say, okay, now let's start connecting pieces of this grid, and use the grid as very much a guide for drawing a character with little swipes and arcs like this. Right? This is a pretty good way to develop characterizations in a way that is fairly predictable and reproducible, because everything's measured. You know, his eye is one grid high. You know, his nose, the tip of his nose is an arc from here to here. So what you're talking about, you could do that very, very well with a mouse and like the polyline tool or something like that. It would be money. If you're not ready to spend the money on a tablet or a tablet screen, then do what you just said, Mikhail. I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly legit way to work. You know, so for me, that would mean taking something like this. I don't really want to use multi-arc. I'd probably use polyline, and I would tend to use it with a vector level so that I can then edit after the fact. And I tell you again, this is not a bad way to work at all. So let's say you draw a loose sketch, Mikhail, just like this on paper. And then you just take a picture with it with your webcam. So it's a terrible picture, but it's good enough that you can see the character. Okay? So then this is what you would do. Just like this. Vector level, and let's just do the polyline thing. Okay? So I'm going to grab this tool, polyline, and I'm going to go like this. Watch. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to pretend his ear was drawn in here. Okay? And I'm going to close that shape. All right? I'll turn the grid off so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing. Okay? And then I'm just going to hit the C key and start editing. Okay, so now I kid you not, and some people might look at this and wonder why I don't do it this way. And it's basically just because I like drawing. You know, I like the way I'm doing it. But the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to get rid of that node. So I'm doing everything with my mouse now. Okay? You can do really good, really tight, great looking cartoons this way. And not only that, with the vector tools, they have their drawbacks, okay? Well, I won't get into that now. But the other thing you can do is then use the tire pump tool to do things like this, where you really add some character judiciously to your lines. You know, so they sort of have some thickness, and this is a little large, frankly, but you know, that sort of thing. And it looks great. It'll look really, really crisp, really tight, and you did it all with your mouse. And frankly, it doesn't take any longer than drawing. So like I said, some people might look at what I just did and go, geez, Dave, that does look pretty crisp. Why don't you just always do it that way? And it's just because for this project, I want the look and the effect of drawing. I used to do this in Krita quite a bit as well with the Bezier path tool. You just click, and then a lot of times you'll just click, but other times you'll go ahead and click and drag. And you just get used to it very quickly, how to make the curves in real time so they look the way you want them to. You know, and then you've got your snapping tools as well, which is kind of useful. So for you, Mikhail, I'd say, dude, if you want to just get busy, there's no problem at all with using the geometry tools to get, frankly, some really nice looking stuff. Probably cleaner looking than what I'm doing. Okay, hey Maria. So I hope that helps you. I hope that helps you, because the tools for a guy like you who doesn't have a tablet are really, really good. You know, and then of course you're going to have to deal with some of the idiosyncrasies of vector levels to a degree, but that ability to go in and edit your lines that way. Of course, technically we can edit our lines here too. We just do a selection, and then we hit the control key, and we can kind of squish and stretch things around to a degree. But it's certainly not as much control as you have with vector tools. So, all right, so I should probably save all since Maria's here, and she'll spank me if I don't. What kind of job you trying to pick up, Maria? Maybe you told me or told us in a previous live stream. I remember you talking about, I don't know, it seems like I remember you talking about different things you've been involved with. Executive assistant. Oh, very good, very good. Hope it works out. I'm going back to the light theme. I definitely do not prefer. So I gave it a try, and the question was, why don't you use a dark theme? The answer is, I don't like it. I don't like that dark theme. Doesn't look very good. Interface. Light. Okay, so if I want to reload the icons, which at the moment, it's basically, it doesn't refresh these icons, so they're all really light, but it doesn't matter at the moment since I'm basically just using a brush anyway. So, hey, Clash Tunes. Dude, I gotta say, you got like a zillion subscribers. What do you got, like 375,000 subscribers? So when I launch my crowdfund, I'm gonna basically beg you to give me a shout out and let your people know that maybe support this thing that I'm doing here. So I'm just warning you in advance publicly, so it's not a big surprise, but because by gum, we need all the help we can get. We really do. So yeah, I'm definitely sticking with the light theme, because what we really have here, as I said earlier, is we've got an HD frame within a broadcast HD. You know, what the camera sees is actually broadcast HD. That just gives us some crop range. Somebody out there is going to complain that, oh my gosh, you know, that's low resolution, it's not true HD, that's like a big problem. Well, from my filmmaking experience, I can tell you guys the dirty little secret is that usually the people that are worried about that are people who don't really know much about what you can get away with as far as the technical specs on your show. Because every movie I ever produced that's out there in full HD was actually edited in broadcast HD and then up-resed at the very, very end. And no one ever knew. So, there you go. If you can imagine it, then you can get it. Yeah, with the added caveat of the word eventually, since you will have those setbacks, and sometimes the solution to the problem comes from an unexpected place as well. So, okay, so this is good. This is working. So Golik is encouraging the people to calm down. I'm not going to worry about Vespa right now because actually he's probably going to be a static drawing and he's just going to move like this into frame. He's just going to be sitting there. Now he may turn this way, so I could maybe go ahead and sketch this on frame 1, but he may look over at Golek, just turn his head this way when the rain stops, just to kind of take a bead on what Golek's response to that will be. So we'll kind of keep that in mind as a possibility. But again, this shot is somewhat complex. The first thing Golek does is try to calm the crowd down because it's raining. It's all his fault that they're excited because he's the one who is talking about, oh, the skies have I can't remember how he says it, but he basically says that the skies have heard your pleas, and that he paints the picture that the rains have finally come, and it's kind of the universe's way of showing you that the marriage that's going to happen today has been blessed, right? And so the people are getting on board with that because obviously since there's been a drought, they're pretty excited that it's raining. Problem is it's about to stop raining. Basically as quick as it started, it stops again, which isn't really surprising. You know, they just get a little hint that it's going to rain and then it ends. So it's like, oh, that kind of sucked. What do you do? So Clash Tune says, yeah, I definitely hope my subscriber listens to me. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Even I'm confused what my subs want. But yeah, well, I think Clash Tunes has got a really cool channel in the sense that it seems like your content, if I remember correctly, you just kind of posted something very occasionally, maybe every month or something, or even less frequently. But it's so cool, and it hit the right note because of the sort of satire part of it, that it's that those videos have kind of gone viral, and so you got a pretty large following and high numbers of views, despite the fact that it's not like you're posting every day or something, So Inio-san says, Clash Tunes, I remember Darren T helped someone with the exact same issue some time ago. You could ask him on Discord. And by the way, as far as my own social networking efforts, I really should be more active on the Discord, frankly, because I know Darren does a great job of keeping that thing going. Okay, so Chiziapo Chiponda. That's a cool name. The vector drawing part was burning up. Glad someone talked about it. I've been animating with that for as long as I can remember. Well, it gives you a lot of, it's basically like I said, if you're a Blender guy, I mean, if you're a Blender guy, there's a lot of good reasons to not even mess with the grease pencil and just use like Bezier curve objects to build up a rig. If you want to create a 2D rig, there's no reason you need to use the grease pencil, frankly. And there's an argument to be made that in some ways you have more control because you can't do shape keys, for example. There's no shape keys with the grease pencil, which is crazy, but there you go. You can do interpolation between frames, and if no one here uses Blender, then you don't know what I'm talking about, so I apologize for that. But maybe I should show you guys really quick what I'm talking about. I'll pull up 2.81a just so I can show. And true confession time, on 2.81, which is one of the 3 versions I use, it's the only one where I do use a light theme. But what I'm saying is that if I draw, so let's just go to draw mode, and if I draw a shape here, so I'll draw an amoeba, just because everyone loves amoebas, right? Okay, and I go over here, and then instead of redrawing the amoeba, what I do is I go into sculpt mode, and I just draw him into a different shape, okay? So we want to move this guy around, and I'm going to hit the F key to make this bigger so I can just kind of... Okay, so I'm not going to do a really big thing here, and I'm not trying to do anything that's particularly good. I just want to show you what I'm talking about. So now if we go here, between these 2 keyframes, we can go into the... and I might have to remember here because it's been a while. Let me hit undo. Okay, so... and I guess I don't technically even need to demonstrate this, but what we can do is in 2 point, I'm trying to think here, in 2.79 it was, I think it was Shift E. And now I have to go, is it channel? Nope. Bear with me. I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember the, it's been a while. It's been a while, and I can't find the freaking menu to do the interpolation. But the bottom line is that Blender will interpolate between these two shapes for you, which you can do in OpenToonz too. So I'll show that in a half a second too, because it's an important thing for somebody that's doing what Mikhail's doing. And I've been using Blender for 20 years, but in the last 6 months I haven't touched it. And it's just like, because they changed the menu so much in 2.8, I always forget where the hotkeys are, or what the hotkeys are, and where the menus even are, because there's so many little dinky icons in Blender 2.8 Plus. So if I get away from it for a few days, it's like I kind of forget what my shortcuts are. But the bottom line is that maybe it's a right mouse click. No, that's not it. It's really annoying. Really, really, really annoying. Multi-frame. Help me out here, Cheesyapo. If you're a Blender geek, where's the stupid menu to do the keyframe interpolation? In Blender 2.79, you put your mouse over the drawing area between any two keyframes and hit Control-Shift-E, and it would work. And I'll bet you it does work, actually. I'll bet you if I'm in draw mode, I bet you it works. Yep, it worked. There we go. If you're in draw mode, it's Control-Shift-E. So sorry about that. But see, so there's what I'm talking about. Well, my point was that if you go into object mode, and then we say we add a curve object. So let's add a Bezier curve, which of course now, because we're in 3D, this doesn't really look right. But I'm going to actually get rid of the grease pencil object. Okay, so we grab this thing and we go into edit mode. Well, with Bezier curves, which of course can be filled shapes and stuff, you can then use shape keys to animate something using a slider where you dial in this change of shape. You would think you'd be able to do that with the grease pencil, but you can't. It hasn't made its way into the program yet. So, and let's face it, come on, it's been a year, and well, what's it been? It's been 2 years since Blender 2.8 came out. So these things do not happen quickly. These things do not happen quickly. Hey Tom, good to see you, buddy. Okay, so just for Mikhail's purposes, let me show this as well, because this is kind of important. All right, so if I go ahead and draw a polyline character. Okay, so Mikhail, you may know this already, so you can stop me if you already know this, and I'll keep it super simple. But if I go like this, and then I add a second drawing, and then I didn't mean to do that. I want to go grab the C key, I suppose. Come on. Okay, on a Toonz level. Okay, I just created a Toonz level instead of a vector level. I'm sorry, completely idiotic of me. Okay, sorry about that. So now so for those of you who don't think you can draw and you want to think more like a Blender type modeler person, so I'm drawing the shape of a head, so I'm going to call this an ear. This is just a simple character that's some sort of lug, and so we'll go like this and say we'll give him some really simple eyes, right? So I mean, the interesting thing about this is the type of stuff you see on Nickelodeon or the Cartoon Network typically looks like this. It looks way more like this than it does look like some sort of anime. So, and then circles, we'll just kind of do it this way. So this is actually, one could argue this is a more modern, contemporary type of cartooning than the stuff I'm doing, right? So anyway, we can go ahead and put in these shapes. And again, I'm just really moving fast here. I don't do my best work when I'm trying to demonstrate something on the fly. In fact, sometimes I think I pretty much suck. It's amazing. The range of ability I appear to have, depending on the frame of mind I'm in, is pretty scary, actually. At least it is to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll get rid of that node. Okay, so I just wanted to demonstrate this. Now, if we come over here and hit the D key, we can, let's just say for simplicity, let's raise his eyebrows up. Okay? Well, now let me think about how to do this. I want to do this in the right order. Yeah. If I go insert like this and then grab all of these, I can now click here and do a linear interpolation, and I still get the in-betweening. Like kind of like what you got in Blender. Okay? So Mikhail, I don't know if you okay, so so I'm telling Mikhail a bunch of stuff he already knows. So sorry about that, dude. Anyway, I just wanted to show that for those who, like I said, if you don't think you're good at drawing and you want to try approaching it in a different way, that is a totally valid approach that's very amenable to building up libraries of rigs, which gives you a lot of leverage, you know, as you go forward in your shots, reusing things, reusing assets. Okay, so we have to imagine the rain falling here. He's trying to calm the crowd down. I'm not going to worry about his lip sync at the moment. And I think, let me see here. Normally we have about a 3 or 4 frame entry. And then he's going to hold his hands up. And let's just start looking at the timing here. So he's going like this. Calm, no, people. Okay. So this is actually going to take a while. Let me look at my script and see what he says, his actual. So yeah, sorry to tell you a bunch of stuff you already knew, Mikhail. Maybe someone else got something out of it. So I'm looking at the script. And okay, I'm making a change to the script. Golik says this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. And he says, bring forth the future queen. Now this is a little confusing, friends, because it says Golik raises his hands to signal the people to quiet down, but then the rain slows to a drizzle, then stops. The king peers at Golik suspiciously, and Golik thinks fast. So I'm rethinking this a little bit. He's got Vespar coming out, and so the rain is happening. So the question for me right now is, should the rain stop here, which is what the original plan was, but then that makes sense. Yes, that is what needs to happen. Because his point is, he's thinking fast, what do I do when the rain stops? So he says, well, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Bring forth the future queen. So now Golik is basically saying, I want to get this wedding over with as fast as possible because things are starting to not necessarily go my way. Okay, so that's what's going on. So I'm back to my original timing. His dialogue, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us, makes perfect sense to the way I had this planned. So, okay, thank you for being patient through that, guys. So, I don't know. Okay, so I really want him to kind of speak to the crowd a little bit. No. I almost think, actually, let's put in a duplicate here. And now we're kind of back in that modeling mode where instead of redrawing everything, which I think would be a little bit silly here, I'm just going to put in a marker where his elbow would be anchored. And that's kind of interesting. I would say I also want to give a slight rotation to his hand. Like that. So let me just see what we have here. I didn't really get the rotation quite where I wanted it to be. Let's try that. Ooh, that looks stupid. I took it way too far. Yikes. Yikes, people. Why'd you let me do that? Okay, that's okay. All right, so here, same thing. I'm just kind of playing around with the idea of him trying to calm the people down a little bit. The basic problem that makes this a little chimpy is that because of the rotation of his hand, which does complicate things quite a lot actually, it may be that I really should be just redrawing this. Okay, so basically, you know, I'm tossed on this one. For an anime type production, frankly, this type of animation is actually not too bad. But you could certainly argue that maybe a little more careful work with the hands would be called for. I think we're okay, though. I think we're okay in this case. So I'm going to say let's give that 3 frames and check the timing. Okay, that's too quick. So, I mean, I'm sorry, opposite, dyslexia moment. It's too slow. Okay, so this is going to be 5 again, and we're going to just go 2 frames. And now I think we probably have the feel we're looking for. Gosh, I don't know. I'm actually thinking I want to speed this up. Little break in between the 2 waves of the hand, but basically, oh no. Yeah, that's better. That's better, especially if he has a line of dialogue there. So, okay, cool. So he's gonna have that line of dialogue. Oh no. And then the rain stops. So now we gotta just hang on a second here. Let's stretch this way down. We'll put in the duplicates where we need to, because this a lot happens in this shot. Okay, and then the rain stops. Boom. Okay, so right there, I'm gonna say we probably want to go. Oh, that does not help, does it? Let's do this, but now let's make a duplicate of 5. So this might not make total sense, but what I'm doing is I stuck 5 in there to be my starting point for this shot, or this drawing, and now I'm going to hit create another one, because what I want to do is I want to have his hands in that position so they sort of come down a little bit, but his head changes position. So now let's think about this. He's addressing the crowd, and there's a lot of ways we could play this. Okay, I'm feeling like maybe what he would do it'd be just go like this. So if that's correct, then what we would have here is something like, sorry, that was not supposed to happen. Grab that little pivot point. Okay, let me just try this and we'll see how it goes. All right, we'll just erase. We'll just take that edge off right there. This is all just pencil test anyway, so it doesn't have to be like totally gorgeous. Okay, that's probably not bad, other than maybe this eyebrow should maybe lift a bit. Okay, not bad. Yeah, not bad. Again, this is a good example where you sort of get that little bit of a choppy feel that you get from 8 frames per second animation. You know, it is what it is. Definitely a little choppier than 12 frames a second. Okay, now in the storyboard we cut to a close-up here of Golik to really grab his expression. I don't know that that's necessary. In fact, boom, I think we should put Vespar Yeah, I think we should actually have Vespar turn his head at that point. So this is a good example of organizing your work. You sort of introduce some questions here. Is it stupid to have Vespar and Golik in the same level? And I would say definitely. Definitely a bad idea. Let's see. Probably the thing to do is let's just trace Vespar into a Toonz raster level or a Smart raster level and go straight to ink and paint, because I pretty much know how I'm going to draw him. And I don't really need to draw him completely. I just need to get him in there. And then we'll modify that for the other drawing. So for that reason, I'm going to just go like this. We're going to do a... All right. And I think that's all I really need to draw. Just indicate his nose maybe a little bit, mouth a little bit. And then he's got sort of those Kevin Bacon type cheekbones. Okay, so that gets me down to here. So now when Golik responds, what I'm saying is, at this point, Vespar turns and it's kind of like, you know, what are we doing here? So now this is risky behavior. I'm going to try this. I'm literally trying to draw this with no pencil test or anything. So let's see how it goes. I'll do my usual thing of working from the known to the unknown. I also probably want to turn the smoothing off. All right, I need to pull out far enough to, yeah, I want to make sure Vespar's looking at Golik. Sorry, hit the wrong key. Now he's got an interesting expression that's a combination of youthful, uncertain concern, but also suspicion. So hence I'm kind of, it's kind of like this eyebrow says, oh, I'm not so sure. And this eyebrow says, what's going on here? Kind of putting them together and seeing how that goes. So I've said this before here, but I'll reiterate it. I think one of the most useful ways to draw is basically what I'm doing right now, where you're really just, you're kind of searching for, can I feel what's certain? Can I feel what I know I need to put in there? Do I see it in my mind, and can you kind of, I don't know why. It's a cool way to work, and it's a fun way to draw. I've never really heard anybody else talk about it, but I've seen people do it, more painters than cartoonists, because they tend to be really careful about measuring and seeing where a mark needs to be, because if they're using oil paint, they want to get the color right and then just put one dab on there and have it be in the right place, and that one mark can all of a sudden make the characterization or the whatever they're painting, just all of a sudden in your imagination you see it, you know, just because of that one mark. It's pretty cool how that works. Boop, boop, boom. So this is working. This is actually working okay. So this is kind of the risky run with this way of working is there's a lot of holes in the drawing. So then I have to sort of go back and patch those holes. Okay, I like that. So now here, what's actually going to happen is Vespar is going to, probably this static drawing, when we enter the frame, there's going to be like 2 or 3 frames where Vespar just moves a little bit to move into position, then he doesn't move, because the focus is totally on Golik after that. Okay, but then we get to here, and when the rain stops, and Golik responds to it, that's when Vespar would be like, well, what's going on here? Right? So that works. That's working. Any JoJo fans? Known to the unknown has been an official mantra for me. Well, I appreciate that, Maria. Zawarudo. Please say Zawarudo. Why do I get these? I don't understand that. A month ago or something, somebody was doing the same thing where they kept wanting me to say something. And it's like, why? So, Erev Saxina, I don't remember if that was you. I don't think that was you. But Erev Saxina, why do you want me to say Zawarudo? What does that mean? I don't even know what that is. Maybe there's a like a joke here or something that I don't get that is slipping by. Okay, so guys, I'm gonna save all and I'm gonna reload OpenToonz or Tahoma2D so that I get my dark icons back. Okie dokie. So hopefully it has saved. It looks like it has. And now we just reopen Tahoma. Hey Ad, welcome to the party today. Today we're doing kind of more the kind of thing you do actually, where it's more based on drawings actually. So this is a standard raster level, a plain old pixel drawing, as opposed to a smart raster level where we have the dynamic palette like this. And I'm just working out the timing and the action here. So Golik, calm down, everyone, and then the rain stops. He's like, huh? And then Vespar looks over. Okay, so I like what I'm seeing so far. Now I gotta think about the dynamics of how Golik is gonna respond to the situation. Is he gonna glance back at Vespar? None of this is encoded in the script. All the script says is the rain slows to a drizzle and then it stops. The king peers at Golik suspiciously, and Golik thinks fast. Now, in a sense, this is a little out of order because actually we already cut to Carliana saying, "Isn't he handsome?" Or how handsome he looks. Here, Golik in the storyboard is responding to the fact that the rain stopped, so we're kind of skipping this one. And the people respond as well. The king is like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And then Golik is like, this is where he says this is a sample. Okay, so I see what happened here. What we've got is a situation where I'm really encoding in the animation of this one shot way more than I'm supposed to be. Truthfully, we should stop the shot here is what should really be going on. Because once he realizes the rain stops, we've got a reaction. We don't need the close-up. We could, but we don't need it. But we're supposed to be getting a reaction of the people, which this is, of course, a reuse of this shot. And then we've got the king's reaction. So we got to get both of these shots in here and then come back to Golik. So now technically we could continue this shot because we could ultimately break 601 up into two pieces and say we'll render it as one thing, but we'll split it in two and put the other shots in between when we edit it. I think that probably is pretty clear for you guys. So over here, what I'm saying is this shot that we're working on right now is actually going to be just cut into two pieces, and the second half will show up here, and then we will edit these other shots in between. This one will probably be deleted, but and then that, of course, is a reuse of that shot. And here, now we're kind of back into the shot we're working on right now, because then Vespar nods respectfully to Golik and excuses himself to go get Tianara, right? So then we've got a Star Wars style wipe, like a diagonal wipe across the screen. So like a diagonal wipe that goes this way across, well, I guess it would, for you guys, it would be probably more like that. As he approaches the tent, and he calls out, and this part is going to be fun. He's going to call out for, "Oh, Tianara," and then he kind of waits and nothing happens. He's like, what's going on here? And so then he kind of pokes down and he's listening like, Tianara. And then, of course, they realize, then Golik shows up. "What's going on here?" And then Golik just lets himself into the tent because he's getting a little impatient with the whole situation. And that's when they realize that Tianara is gone, and I won't continue from there, but so you can see what the continuity's doing. So if we're going to split this shot in two, what we need to do is have Golik do his little explanation, which would be this right here. "People, hear me. This wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Bring forth the future queen," he says. That's basically what's going on here. So the question now becomes, friends, how do we get from this to that? Let's review this. So, no. The rain stops. Okay, and now we have to bear in mind that we're cutting away from this shot. What's Next. I think we should cut closer. Yes. So let's run this through again. Boom. Okay, we're going to stop at 52. Let's kill that. And I'm going to leave Vespar out for the moment. And then this shot is going to be a duplicate. But what we're going to do is, I should mention that there's a lot of stuff I'm doing here that is, I'm doing it because I'm having fun drawing. It's a lot of what I'm doing here is not necessary, if the truth be known, because the lion's share of this shot could actually all be animated with one or two drawings. So I'm doing a lot of extra work here, just drawing, just because it's fun to do so, you know, and I'm sort of enjoying the process. But in all reality, the idea of going from this to this as another drawing is kind of silly. If you were going to be the anime purist and you're saying, well, no, I want to have everything, including the camera moves and everything, just baked into my drawings, okay. You know, that's okay. That's a perfectly legitimate way to work, and so you can do that. I'm just saying it's technically not really necessary. So I'm doing a lot of extra work here. But let's tighten up on Golik, and I think that for the purposes of planning, we will probably, I'll just erase this and put this little sketch right here, because I think what we're going to do is we're basically going to exaggerate the focal depth a little bit, but when we cut to this closer shot, Vespar will be a little bit tighter. So we're going from this. By the way, I'm going to hit the N key, so we're going to go from this to this. Okay? Makes sense? Now, the question, of course, becomes, well, why even do it in the same OpenToonz file? And that's a legit question. There's really no reason to do it in the same OpenToonz file. What I really should do is split this in two. Yeah. But because I'm feeling frisky, I'm just going to continue for the moment. All right. So step one, let's get his hands to let's get these hands a little bit into shape here. Just trying to feel the... Okay, this is the first frame, so honestly it doesn't matter much where his hands are until the next frame. So I'm going to hit duplicate, and before we move his hands, I need to get this out of here. Before we move his hands, we've got to get his expression back towards the people. So let me see here. He's got to go into full-on damage control mode. Okay, Golik is going into full-on damage control mode. So he's got to turn to address the people again. He's fully digested the fact that the rain, unfortunately for him, has kind of stopped, so he can't really capitalize on the big miracle too much longer. And thus, he needs to soften his gaze, which you tell ya, bad guy. All right. So he's got to put on his most grandfatherly expression. And this pupil is barely in the right place. Ah, it's actually okay, come to think of it. So there we go. Close enough for rock and roll. Well, almost. So I want him to be looking almost sparkly here. Almost sparkly. What time is it? 11:18? Okay, so we're going to cut to this wide shot. We should probably give it 2 frames. Actually, I'm going to say this one will give it 4. And then we're leaving lip sync out, by the way, of course. You guys probably knew that. We're not going to, I'm not concerned about getting the talking in there at this point. I don't know. Rain stops. He looks up. Cuts. Okay, that happened way too fast. So when we go to this shot, boom. Okay, what's missing here, what's glaringly absent, is his thought process. And I think for this shot, it's kind of important. So let's take our time and just kind of deal with one little modification at a time. So step one is I'm going to leave his head in the same position and really want to kind of loosen up here and sketch this. And I'm gonna keep inserting very, very small changes. So I can't say that this is necessarily a recommended technique. I'm kind of exploring this approach here in real time. Now that's not bad, other than his other eyebrow didn't do anything. Okay, so that's a little bit of a flaw, but basically, sorry about that, wrong tool. That I like. Okay, so now we're getting into some nice characterization, actually. Okay, and of course that change right there happened way, 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 way too quickly. So, yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to portray what he's thinking. That's not bad. You could argue that a tween right here would be nice, but basically... So let's do that. Just because we're kind of doing the real-time frame-by-frame animation thing, let's add that tween. So what am I talking about? Well, if we onion skin it, you can see that there's just a little tiny transition, and frankly, him moving slightly slower would probably be a good thing. So I'm going to just move this a little bit there. Again, if we were doing ink and paint, I would not be redrawing this. I'd probably be using the plastic tool, frankly. But, okay, so, yeah, see, that's nice. Now, one could argue that you could add the plastic tool to this and give his body a little bit of motion, his body a little bit of, you know, just a little bit of bend as his weight shifts when his head moves around. I don't think we need to bake that into the drawings. I mean... In fact, one thing I can tell you that I just learned like a month ago was that at least if you put your character in a sub-scene, then when you do the plastic tool, it will generate a different mesh for every animated frame, which gives you a lot of power and flexibility in using the plastic tool on a sequence that's already been animated before you ever do the secondary animation. For those who have no idea what the plastic tool is, you know, you can look at almost any of my videos and you're going to see the use of the plastic tool. But basically what I'm talking about here is that his body really should be shifting here. Okay, I guess since I'm doing it, let's just do it. Okay, so what I'm saying is, and I'm not worrying too much about his hands at the moment, okay? But when his head comes up a little bit, his body should compensate. Now that's not exactly perfect. And I'm not quite. No. Okay, I just hit the wrong. Not quite. Okay, yeah. Something's definitely out of whack here. Let's just slow down and think about this. Ignore his body for a moment. His head's coming forward a little bit. So he's kind of back like this, and then he's leaning forward. And what we're doing here, the problem is I'm literally doing this bass-ackwards. I've got his body moving back when it should actually be moving forward. So I apologize for that grievous error, that utterly and completely stupid mistake. Okay, let's just see. Yeah, that's horrible. Ugh. Well, like I said, I reserve the right to sort of botch it once in a while. Now, if I didn't recognize when I had fouled things up, that would be a little bit more of a problem. But I'm pretty sure that's okay. Now, there's an additional problem though, which is if we're going to do this, again, this would almost normally be done with the animation tools, but if we're going to do it, we need to take his entire frame and shift it forward so that as the body leans forward, you know, everything goes together as a unit, right? Yeah, there we go. That makes a little more sense. Okay, so now are we going to nitpick the fact that his hands don't move in this shot? I don't think it matters, actually. Number one, it might be cropped in a little tighter to begin with. And number two, your attention is going to be all here. That's what you're going to be looking at. You're not going to be nitpicking whether his hands moved, you know, properly. So let's just back the heck up here and take a look at what we've got. Now, people, rain stops. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, see, that worked out perfectly. That's what we wanted. Okay, cool. I'm feeling a little more secure with my results at the moment. Thank you very much. So, looks like Mikhail says, what do people like more, realistic characters and environment, or a good message that you're sending with your animation without realism? That's an interesting question, the way you worded it. That's a nice question, Maria says. I would say it completely depends on the story and what the creator wants to get across. Yeah, for me, I admire animation in principle, especially since I've started learning what really goes into it. I would say, my opinion, Mikhail, is that at the end of the day, all I care about, because all I can afford to care about, is does this engage the audience? Do they get grabbed? Does the characterization grab them? It's actually one of the reasons why it isn't just about the animation. It's the script, it's the voices, it's going to be the musical score to a degree. All of these things are going to work together to create a feeling. Okay? And a good example of that type of thing, if you guys want to suffer it, is just watch this movie. Because this movie, when I created this movie, this was shot, I think, 6 years ago now. But when I created this movie, I was trying to capture the feeling that you got from a 1960s Disney movie, basically. You know, The $1 Million Duck, or, you know, something like that. That period. And you hear it in both the musical score and in the way the characters are lit. Everything counts. Everything counts. Everything contributes to the emotional experience that you have, and it's hard. You know, you can think you're getting what you're trying to accomplish, and it turns out it doesn't quite work. That was kind of what I criticized about The Rescuers. When I watched The Rescuers, and by the way, it's debatable whether you can ever say that animation is realistic. Okay, if you're getting into CGI and effects that are supposed to be invisible in terms of their level of realism, or if you're getting into rotoscoping, then of course you're getting closer to quote-unquote realistic. But other than that, animation is never realistic. You know, it's always a stylized portrayal of reality, and that everything about that stylization contributes to the experience you get from it. So you feel differently watching Bugs Bunny than you feel watching Naruto. They invoke a different feeling because of everything. Because of the story, the characters, the voices, the music, the animation, you know, the background painting. Everything contributes to it. And so what we're all trying to do is do the best job we can of putting together all the necessary components that create the feeling we're trying to create in our show. And then we hope that we're competent enough to do it well. So there's the one problem that if you're an animator, if you're working here with OpenToonz or whatever, you have two problems. And you guys are seeing it today. You're seeing it in real time. I have two problems here, not one. Problem number one is just knowing what to do. Problem number two is having the skill to do it. You got to be able to do both. And If you execute beautifully as an animator, which they did in The Rescuers, you've got gorgeous animation and a completely crap movie. Why? Because the story sucks. I mean, there's things about it that are good, but basically the writing was terrible on that movie. Terrible. And it showed. I mean, it was modestly successful in the climate of movies like The Aristocats and, later Oliver and Company and stuff like that. But basically, it's a pretty awful movie. And it's largely because of the script. There's real problems in the writing, number one, and number two, it'd be like you got a movie where everything's gone wrong. Like right here. If we basically took 30 seconds, I'll give you a good example of what I'm talking about. If we take 30 seconds right now and have Golik say to the audience, not directly to the audience, but Golik says, "Oh my goodness, the rain stopped. This is terrible." Okay, if Golik said that, you're sitting there watching the show going, "Okay, when's the show going to get moving again?" You've insulted the audience. The audience knows the rain stopped. The audience knows just from his facial expression, they know that it's a problem. Why do you need Golik to say? So OBS just reconnected. So that type of redundant, ultimately very boring exposition that tells the audience what they already knew is all over the place in The Rescuers. That movie, they could have easily chopped a half hour out of that movie, I'm sure. At least a half an hour they could have just chopped out of the movie, and it would have been only an hour long, but it would have been a better show. And I stand strongly behind that opinion because, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I can write a better screenplay than they wrote on that movie. I guarantee you. It was pretty awful. I mean, frankly, that's my greatest skill in the entertainment media space, is my skill as a writer. It's really the thing that I'm the best at. I'm okay at animation. I'm pretty good at writing the musical score. But I can write a screenplay. And I know bad writing when I see it. Just saying. So, and that movie's got some pretty awful writing. So, and that's what are we struggling with here today? What we're struggling with is, how do we concisely and compactly, in the smallest available space, let the audience know just what they need to know and not let them know a bunch of stuff they don't need to know, because we don't want to bore them. That's why a lot of times it's really a tug of war between giving it enough time but not too much, right? So that's where in this shot, we got a lot happening in a fairly small space of time. So what did that take? It took about 1.5 seconds to digest what is going on in Golik's mind. Boom, quick calculation. Boom, then he goes right into it. There's no reason for Golik to turn to Vespar and go, "Oh boy, this is a big problem, isn't it, that the rain stopped?" Right? I'm being a little snarky about it because, like I said, if you watch The Rescuers, you just see it all over the place. Like the little mice in the bayou are just, everything they say is just redundant repeating of what the audience already knew before they ever said it. Like, those characters shouldn't have even been in the show at all. But what they did was they took that one guy, I don't even know who it was. Well, he's kind of got a voice like this, and that's the character, and he had been in a couple of their other movies. I think he was the sheriff in the Robin Hood, and they used him. They had a bunch of voice actors that were kind of on call that had done several Disney movies that they just kept reusing the same people over and over. And by the time you saw The Rescuers, you had seen that same exact character in different form in 3 or 4 movies. You're going, okay, same old, We're kind of repeating ourselves here. And that would be, for me, that's the hallmark of Disney from 1965 to 1985, is repeat yourself, repeat yourself. To get back to Mikhail's question or point, I think it was Mikhail, the problem is that, yeah, absolutely, Maria. Same principle in stage play writing. So often all you need is an intelligent actor to put across with a gesture what a few sentences do. And additionally, one of the most valuable things you can get with your stage writing, which you don't always get in other arenas of writing, is the hopefully the rehearsal process, which of course is replete in theater, will reveal the problems. You know, and if you're married to the script and not able or willing to revise it at the point that you're rehearsing, then you know you're kind of stuck trying to figure out. That's where your actor's skill really becomes a thing, because now the actor has to take something that maybe isn't written that well. Like, in other words, the things that I'm relating about the rescuers that were wrong with it, or that I say were redundant, there were ways to take that same script without changing it and playing it in a way that wouldn't have been redundant. There are things they could have taken completely different approaches to the characterizations that were surprising, as opposed to, again, repeating themselves from what had been modestly successful in previous movies, you know, like Jungle Book, let's say. You know, I mean, let's face it, you know, Pat Harris did Baloo. Baloo was really popular. Okay, let's have Pat Harris be Little John and Robin Hood. I get it, you know. Well, Mikhail, that's a great question. And it's, of course you can, and if you do it here on YouTube as a fan thing, so that any money you're making from it is basically just coming from the fact that people watch it on YouTube, which is a totally legit approach to our animation these days. Frankly, when I get back to the Akari anime thing that I was working on before I started working on Salt and Light, that's probably what we're going to do. Is we're probably just going to release. Now, of course, that's original. That's not a rehashing of something else. But it's not. But I mean, look at the Futurama thing. You know, the fan Futurama script. I was just talking about this with my brother-in-law yesterday. Is that, you know, if we release that thing, we really need to just keep it here on YouTube, and we can't like crowdfund it or anything, because I'm sure that the people that own that would be crawling up our backsides if we were trying to make money off their thing. But if we just do a fan thing and release it, you know, maybe 5 minutes at a time or whatever here on YouTube, I think that would be fine. You know, there's fan things out there, and usually it's only good for the property. So Interstellar only benefits if you create a fan property and put it on YouTube. That just draws more attention to Interstellar, so that's good for Interstellar. But there are circumstances where the creators might tap you on the shoulder and say, no, you don't get to do that. I'm sorry, you need to take that down. It could happen. It could happen. So if you have the ability to contact the creators before you go down that road, that would be better. If you want to know how to contact the creators, it's really simple. Get yourself an IMDb Pro subscription, which I think will cost you a couple $100 a year, so it's not totally cheap. But on IMDb Pro, you can get the contact information for any actor, you know, any actor's agent or any production company, everybody, you know, in Hollywood that produced movies like Interstellar or whatever. And I'm sitting here assuming Interstellar is a movie. I haven't even seen it, so I'm thinking, yeah, that's a movie, right? I should know that. But yeah, that's how I got a hold of Sean Young. That's how we put Sean Young in the last movie I released. Is that we just went on IMDb and got a hold of her agent and said, hey, we want to hire Sean Young for a day. Is she available? And basically it was, well, what are you willing to pay? This is what we're willing to pay. And okay, and you know, you got to give her first class airfare. But I mean, other than that, it's just you know, give her a place to stay. So I'm feeling pretty good about this shot, guys. I think we're in good shape. I'm going to run it one more time. The rain is coming down. So remember, through this section right here, the rain right here, it trickles to a stop. All in 1 second. You know, this is a very quick thing. People. Okay, so the question is, what's Golick going to say? According to the script... Okay, yeah. According to the script, he says, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Bring forth the future queen. Okay, so that's what happens next. It's kind of fun. I mean, Golick's Man, he's a snaky dude. He's always thinking fast. Friends. Okay. Let's keep going with this because we need to kind of deal with his body language. Now, again, normally I wouldn't work this way because honestly, this is a plastic tool job. We just need to be able to shift his body weight around a little bit and change his facial expression. But for our purposes today, let's keep rocking. So he says, friends. Okay, so now we got to get our timing. He's going to say, friends. And then I think here he's going to lean back. Now we're basically just reusing earlier shots. I'm going to leave his hands where they are. Okay? I'm going to let his body shift back contrary to his hands. So, shift, and then I'm going to duplicate this and do it again. So you guys will see in half a second here what I'm trying to do. But I think this will make sense. Okay, so again, we're going to put this anchor spot kind of down near his belly button. Okay, we need him to lean back, but since he's playing a little bit of a game here, we also want his head to kind of bend forward in this sort of kindly way. So again, this is going to be a little bit of a turn like that from this. Boop, boop. Yes, there we go. But his hands stay put. Okay, so now this should work, I think. We're getting into a fairly long shot here. Okay, so we'll start here for simplicity. Let's just set our start marker there to make it. I think that makes it so when we rewind, yeah, it goes to there. So he's going, friends, this wondrous rain was but a sample. Okay, right there on the word sample, boy, oh boy, I'm definitely seeing something here with his hands, and we're going to need a tween. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to put in two drawings, and I'm going to actually just erase this. I'm going to erase so it's not distracting me on the tween, and then here I'm going to do the same thing because we need to change his hand expression. So what's he going to do? He's going to do this. This is what he's going to do. He's going to put his hands out like this. Ah, it's all good. Everything's wonderful. Everything's fine. Don't worry. The thing that I told you just a moment ago was an amazing miracle. It's not over. It's still going. We're still benefiting from the wonderful, wonderful miracle that I lied to you and told you was happening before your very eyes. This is what's going on in his head. Okay. So now this is a very awkward. Honestly, I don't know if it's worth trying to draw that awkward pose. I think maybe we'll leave that out for half a second. Let's get this hand in there first. So we'll just go ahead and do the onion skin thing, which I usually don't do. But, and then this really needs to be here. Okay, so now I can see. So let's just go in here and keep it loose. Keep it loose. We're going to have an arc here and kind of an arc here. So basically his cuff is going to wind up right there. I'm doing this as a straight tween, which is normally not advised. Probably. Normally we would want to favor one side or the other on the tween. And then, of course, at 12 frames per second or higher, we would be putting in more than one tween. But in this case, because we're doing 8 frames per second, we're just going to do one tween. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow, you can see his hand has to flip over, actually. So I'm going to favor, so it's a straight tween in terms of the position of his arm, but it's not going to be a straight tween in terms of the shape of his hand. So what I'm going to do is allow his hand to sort of be coming around. So there's his thumb. There would be his fingers, kind of like that, right? So we're going from this to this, and I think I probably nailed it. Now I need to look at the other hand here shortly and see what we've got in terms of where we need to go with it. I think what we can do here, yes, what I think we should do is, I'm just really seeing this one in my mind. Okay. I'm going to actually just have a very simple tween, and I don't need to draw this because it's going to disappear off the screen. But let's get his thumb around like that, and then we'll put his arm out like this so we don't actually have to see his hand on this shot. We just can see that his arms are spread out wide. Okay, so now that worked. That worked actually pretty well. Okay. Friends, this wondrous miracle. This was, what does he say? This was just a sample. Okay, so now what we need to do, sorry about that, guys. We need to stretch this down. Gosh, I don't know how far. Let's go to 160 and see how it goes. Okay. And since I manually adjusted the start and end points, now I have to manually adjust them. Once you set them, at least from what I've seen, once you set them manually, you have to continue to set them manually. Okay, so now I'm going to take a quick look at the nothing new on the comments. Mikhail asked about the cartoon version of Interstellar, and I gave my best opinion. Okay, I want to look at its script. Script says, okay, I want to add friends. Okay, I just want to add friends, period, 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 little pause right there. This wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Okay, so let's go down here. Let's look at that. Friends, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Okay, darn it, that is annoying. Sorry, guys. He leans back, and he says, rain is but a sample right there. So this all needs to be freaking well deleted. All right. This wondrous rain was but a sample of what, okay. And now, why did that, let me look at this. Why did that, oh, I see the problem. I got my second tween in, oh, I'm an idiot. Sorry, guys. Oh, this is so bloody embarrassing. I can't believe I did it. I did a very silly and stupid thing. Stupid, I say. Oh, my degree of stupidity is unlimited, I say. Unlimited. All right, so there we go. Back to here. And he says, friends, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Okay, now I could totally see, by the way, he says, but a sample of what awaits us. So right there on waits, there's a little bit of a push there. Let's put in another tween, or another frame, I should say. We'll stretch this down. Sample of what? I think he's going to say, debate this. You could say, well, wait a second. If you're going to do this, why don't you at least have the decency to put in a little, oh, come on, Dave, really? There. A little bitty tween to at least hint the fact that his head's going to move. Okay, and frankly, I'm actually thinking in this case that it would be better if we made it a little bit stronger tween. And those of you who think I'm crazy for not using onion skins, well, I take your point. I take your point. Being a little sloppy here. Okay, David, I personally wouldn't watch a movie before 1990. There's so much information now that people will probably choose a later movie. I think Mikhail's referring to the ready availability of all kinds of media through all kinds of platforms, and so there's so much good stuff available today that why would you be going back to the 1950s or the 1960s to watch content? I think that's what Mikhail's saying. I take your point, but there's some things about that that I do strongly disagree with, because it gets back to what I earlier I pointed to my movie Clerical Errors that's available here on my YouTube channel. If you look at the aesthetic of that, I deliberately was channeling an aesthetic from an earlier time. But I did it because I wanted to capture a feeling that was from an earlier time that you don't tend to get in movies that have been made more recently. So I don't agree with that. I think that there's really good like a really great example of that would be matte painting. So back in the day, because the cameras weighed 300 pounds, if you wanted to extend the set, you would have to do a matte painting. So I'm going to actually illustrate this. So let me show you why. I want to make this point because I think it's kind of important. So, okay. So let's say I go out right now in my own neighborhood and I want to have a castle. Okay. So there's a road. What we have is it's what's called an esplanade. So it's a nice park kind of thing because it's like what some people would call a boulevard. So you got a street going this way, and then several hundred feet away you've got a street going the opposite direction. Then you have houses all along the way. So there's houses all along here, sidewalk, and it's a beautiful park-like type of situation. So if I go out here, and so let's say there's some street lights. You know, we got street lights along near the sidewalk, this type of thing. So I go out here with my camera and I shoot my character, you know, jogging down the street or whatever. And let's say for my purposes, what I really want here is I don't want this house. I want this to be a castle. Okay? It's kind of a stupid example, but let's just say. Okay? Well, in the old school days of filmmaking, you didn't have a choice. What you would do is you would go out and you would shoot this thing, and then what you would do is you would either put a piece of glass in front of the camera, or sometimes you could do it later with photographic techniques. But what you would do is you would literally do an oil painting of the castle here, and you would paint it over. So this part of the frame would literally be a painting. This is all a painting. And all of this is what you actually shot with your camera. Well, the thing you find is that, number one, you cannot do this if the camera moves. If the camera moves, now you're into modern techniques like digital motion tracking, where you've got to track these little points on the maybe on the street lights, or if you have some landmark in the background like a house, you might track a corner of the window. So you do the digital tracking to follow what the camera's doing, and then you've got to use generally CGI and 3D to place the castle three-dimensionally inside your shot. Okay? Okay, yeah, so Mikhail's saying there's just this proliferation of content that's available through all kinds of platforms. And he's right. Okay, so here's my point. My point today is this. When I stopped moving the camera and actually started framing up my shots and considering the rule of thirds, and so the rule of thirds being something like this. But when I began to compose my shots and then not move the camera, my cinematography improved a lot really quickly. That was when my cinematography actually improved. So unfortunately, my most successful film, the cinematography is not actually that good. It's one of the weaker points of the movie. But my point to Mikhail is this. Nobody does it this way anymore. I mean, basically, nobody does it this way. In fact, what people are going to do is they're going to get all excited about shows like Mandalorian, where they've finally actually improved on green screen process, where they're using a bank of LEDs, and they're using I think it's the Unreal game engine in their background, so that when they move the camera, the background actually moves on the screen in coordination with the camera, so they basically get this virtual environment that looks spectacular. And it does look spectacular. But here's my point. My point is that there is an aesthetic and there is a feeling that you get when you watch an old movie where they couldn't move the camera. It's just like anime. You know, I've talked about anime where you've got a character, it's an action scene, and the character's like this. You know, they're not moving, but the background's going, right? And they've taken the economies of the costs of creating the show, and they've turned it into an aesthetic. My point is that for me personally, I tell you the truth, I like this better. I would rather see a static, locked camera with a matte painting, old school, personally, than to see the latest, greatest, coolest CGI technology. They're both good,
but they're very different, and the feeling you get from them is very different. And the truth is, for me, the whole CGI thing ended 15 years ago, basically. I haven't seen anything new. For me, I haven't really seen anything new in about 15 years in terms of what I'm seeing on the screen. Yeah, it's a little improved, a little bit sharper, a little bit more explosions and pyrotechnics and all the rest, but basically nothing's changed for 15 years. There's a case to be made that it all ended with the Matrix, actually. But that was, again, an example we talked about the other day where once the Matrix put bullet time on the screen, all of a sudden what's going to happen? Immediately, people came up with economical tools to make it easier and easier to do bullet time, and then you're seeing it in all the TV commercials, and pretty soon you're sick of it. So when I see exciting, new technology-driven effects, I tend to be like, I'm kind of like bored. I've seen it all before, It's like, so what do I care about? I care about the characters and the story. If the writing's good, the CGI and stuff is just there to support that. I think that's a good place to come from. I mean, I think it's script and characters and story are what are timeless. That's what's timeless. The effects and how you tell the story is going to change over time. What I'm doing here is, I don't know, it's a westernized anime, so it's basically, in terms of the aesthetics of it, I'm trying to do something kind of similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, I suppose. Or pick any anime, pick your favorite anime, and especially if it takes place in the past where you didn't have a lot of sci-fi technology and whatnot, then you got something similar to what I'm trying to do. It's all good. At the end of the day, it's all about whether the edited show engages the audience. Okay, so now Maria probably has some wonderful comments to add. And by the way, Mikhail, I respect your opinion. If you wouldn't watch anything before 1990, okay, that's fine with me. I think that the period between 95 and 2005 was hugely, hugely important. I think that for television and film, the whole CGI thing went from really crude to really amazing in those 10 years, 95 to 2005. And I think that's when you began to see a big improvement in television as well. The writing was better. There's a lot of really good, especially on the dramatic side of things, but also on the comedy side of things, in television since the 1990s, I think was an improvement. I mean, I think the 80s were kind of a snoozer in terms of the quality of the content, So I love Stephen J. Cannell as a creator and as a creative person and as a writer. But if I actually go back and look at his shows, they're hard to watch. The A-Team or the Rockford Files. The Rockford Files is okay, but so I respect the man and I respect his work and his ethic and his attitude, but his actual shows are just okay. So, all right, so she says you can watch older content on any of those platforms, obviously, and I have. The platform for me doesn't detract from the fact that the content may be older. As an example of impressive matte painting is the approach to Bodega Bay in The Birds. Did I say Bodega correct? Are you talking about the Hitchcock movie? Mikhail says, I've seen weak drawing skills get over 1 million views, and you're absolutely right. So any style can get views. Bye, David, Maria, and everyone. And Mikhail has hit the road. But he's correct. I've seen weak drawing skills get over 1 million views on YouTube. So any style can get views. Yeah, and if your goal is to get views, then you just have to experiment and see what you need to do to get views. Obviously, I'm just working on creating a show, and I don't believe that there really is no scenario where a channel like mine would ever, I think, get super high numbers of subscribers or views, because I just don't. I mean, probably I'm not that interesting, and the work I'm doing isn't that interesting to that many people. To the people who really think it's cool, it's probably super cool. But that's like, it's like being into quantum physics or something. I mean, it's something that only a very small number of people are ever going to really get into as far as, getting excited about it. I do. If I could find somebody else that was doing what I'm doing on YouTube, where you actually get to just look over their shoulder and watch them create the cartoon, I would watch it. I mean, that's why I like Ed Tadeo, because that's basically what he's doing. But there's very few people doing it, and I just think it's a cool thing. But it's all opinion. I don't know if Mikhail left in a bit of a tiff right there. I'm not really sure, but I will say he is correct. I've seen weak drawing skills get 1 million views too. Okay, so here we are. Is Darren around, by the way? I've got 5 concurrent viewers right now, and I am curious if Darren is one of them. Usually he says hello, so I'm guessing not. But I'm actually wondering if I should send Darren this. Well, I probably shouldn't use this scene because this is not actually a TLV file. This is going to be an image sequence. I'm thinking out loud here, guys. So he reacts. Friends, this wondrous rain was but a sample of what awaits us. Not bad. Oh, you are here. Okay, so yeah, Darren, I was actually thinking about this is not a TLV level, so in other words, it's not compact. Like it's not all. This is a standard raster level, which means it's going to be an image sequence. But what I was wondering is, sometime very soon, what I want to do is create a TLV level and just email you the TLV. Say, okay, go ahead and do the, not necessarily the ink and paint, probably just the ink. You could do the paint too if you want to, and then if I need to adjust the colors on this end with the color sampler, I could do that too. So anyway, that was what I was thinking. I was thinking sometime soon I want to go ahead and send you a TLV level to go ahead and do the ink on. This might not be the best. Just I'd have to zip it up or something, obviously, because it's going to be an image sequence. But I want to take something like this. That's a TLV level, and just shoot that to you so you can see what you can do with it as far as ink goes. That would be quite cool. So now at this point, do we need to do anything more with Vespar? Let's see here. Vespar. When the rain stops, Vespar does glance over at Golek. And so obviously this should be a blow up of this pose, not this pose. But that's neither here nor there. That doesn't really harm us. Drop you an email when you get home about the best way to get it to me. Okay. I mean, if your email hasn't changed, then don't bother, because I've still got your email address from way back when. But yeah, let's do that. Let's just rock and roll and do it and see how it goes. And you make no promises, and I'll make no promises, and just kind of take a poke at it, and we'll see if it's looking pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling like as far as the pencil test aspect of this goes, I think we're in good shape. So with that, oh boy, it's been 2 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, I think. So Darren, you came in just a little bit late today, but yeah, I think so. Cause what? Let me just, cause for other people that might be watching that might be wondering kind of like what we're saying here. To be perfectly clear, what I'm saying is it is possible. Okay, if I take this shot, this pencil test, it's possible that I would send this over to someone else to say, hey, go ahead and ink it. Okay, and then for some reason, something about it, I would be like, they did a good job, definitely a great effort, but for some reason there's something about it I don't like. That could happen. That always is a possibility. So you want to just keep it very clear that, that could happen. Now, one way we can mitigate that, in our case, is by looking at things like this. Like, for example, when I'm inking, I have a minimum size of 2 and a max of 4. with pressure on. So that's what I use for all the inking that's been done at all recently. Hardness is usually somewhere in the middle, and then the smoothness, it depends on what I'm drawing, whether I turn the smoothing on. But if you're using settings, if you're using these specific settings, and of course this is somewhere in that zone, you're probably going to get a look that's pretty darn close, you know. So that's what I'm thinking. So anyway, just clarifying that little detail. So I think for this, I think I've done my job here today. I really wanted to, I knew this was going to be a motion heavy scene. I knew I wanted to do hand-drawn animation and kind of see how that went. And I'm pretty satisfied. I think, you know, we'll add some eye blinks, and obviously we need to add some lip sync. You know, he is talking. One question here is that head scoots down a little bit. Is that an anticipation? Boom, boom. Look at that. Is that an anticipation? Yeah, actually I think it works as an anticipation. I mean, technically, one could argue that his head shouldn't have come back so far in this direction, but I think we're okay. And then there was a little timing thing. So he says, sample. Yeah. Yeah, that feels like it's a little late. So let's go Control X, and then we'll stretch this. Well, it's up to 160 either way. So yeah, so I think I'm done. I think I'm done for this session anyway. All right, guys. I think with that, I will see you on the next time. And thanks for tuning in. It's been a good couple hours. A lot of good discussion. A lot of good work getting done. And I need to really get to some other things related to the crowdfunding thing. So that's pretty much where the rest of my day is going to go. All right. So with that, as you guys know, there will be more later.